to both our panelists, Mr. Rasik Gupta, a Principal, Darshan Academy, Dassoya, and Ms. Amrita Burman, Deputy Director, Sunbeam Group of Educational Institutions, Varanasi. Thank you so much to both our distinguished panelists for joining us for this conversation today. And today's conversation is part of these series of talks that we are having, which we're calling SCHOOLVERSITY, National Education Policy, Holistic Multidisciplinary Education. Now, before I come to the topic at hand, I want to give you a little bit of context about why this talk show and what is the thought and vision behind having these conversations. And the vision behind having this conversation is that, as an institution of higher education, as an institution of eminence, and as one of the leading institutions in terms of higher education in India, we feel that there is a need that is there in terms of having increased dialogue and increased sort of bridging of gaps between the school education and university education in India. And one of the ways of doing that is for educators, both at the higher education level and educators at the school level, to come together in common platforms and to reflect on some of the key issues, challenges, possibilities, opportunities that face education system, both school education and higher education in India today. There are so many ways that we feel that we must come together. For example, the vision of NEP in terms of multidisciplinary education, a research intensive education, vocational education, interdisciplinary education, all of that is also rooted in a vision that is in terms of school education. And unless we align these visions, both in terms of school education and higher education, and operate in silos or in isolation, the true vision of NEP, we feel, would not be able to be realized. So that is the context in which we are, we've started this conversation series, and we're trying to bring in key leaders in education across the country and actually some from outside, to be able to have meaningful engagements and conversations. So that is the context behind the talk show. Now, a little bit about the topic at hand, which is National Education Policy 2020, Holistic Multidisciplinary Education. Now, all of us know that the National Education Policy proposes sweeping changes, both in school education and in higher education, right? And NEP is not, an education policy is ideally comes every decade. But India has had 3 education policy till date, right? The first education policy came in 1968 under Indira Gandhi. The second education policy came in 1986 under Rajiv Gandhi. And after 1986, the National Education Policy was revised in 1992 when P.V. Narasimha Rao was the Prime Minister, right? But the third NEP, the National Education Policy, was released in 2020 under the Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government, right? Now, what is a National Education Policy? This is not for the panelists present here, but all of you who are perhaps watching us. The National Education Policy is a framework, a comprehensive framework to guide the development of education in the country, right? The latest, the 2020 NEP, is the third National Education Policy. It replaces the 1986 NEP. So the 86 NEP was in place for 34 years. So it is after 34 years that we now have a new education policy. Now, as far as higher education is concerned, the NEP, proposes changes such as opening up of Indian higher education to foreign universities, dismantling of the UGC, which is University Grants Commission, and the All India Council for Technical Education, and introduction of a 4-year multidisciplinary undergraduate program. with multiple exits option, discontinuation of the MPhil program. So at the higher education level, these are some of the key changes that are being proposed. At the school education level, the NEP 2020 focuses on overhauling the curriculum. It talks about easier board exams, a reduction of the syllabus that retains the core essentials, thrust towards experiential learning and critical thinking. And a significant shift that we see in the 1986 policy. That 1986 policy talked about a 10+2 structure of school education. But new education policy talks about a 5+3+3+4 design, right? And it basically brings in, the age group of 3 to 8. So it will be the foundational age, 8 to 11 is preparatory age, 11 to 14 middle, 14 to 18 secondary, right? And it provides for a very very revolutionary, holistic, multidisciplinary kind of education possibilities, both at the school and at the university and higher education level. Now, what kind of implications does it have in terms of the education landscape in India? How are you as educators at the school? Because the vision is that 2040, by 2040, this vision is to be implemented, right? The other part is that education is a concurrent subject. So it is not the center and state will have to work together to be able to implement the NEP. So just to set the context before I invite you to reflect, is that what is happening at the school level? What is your vision as educators leading, this kind of shift in education in India? How do you reflect on the NEP? How do you look at the holistic multidisciplinary education proposed through the NEP? What kind of impact would it have at the school level education? What can we do at the university level to be able to bridge the school-versity gap? These are some of the things that we want to discuss through this forum. So with that and that brief context, I would like to open up the conversation for reflections. I would like to first invite Mr. Rasik Gupta to kindly share his thoughts and reflections before I go to Ms. Amrita Burman. Mr. Gupta, over to you.
First of all, thank you very much for providing me with this platform, for sharing my views on NEP and the topic, which is holistic and multidisciplinary education. I'm thankful to Madam Indu Paul also, who became the medium for joining me and you so that we can share our views. Thank you, ma'am. And as I was mentioning earlier, I had written one article in the beginning of year 2019. It's named The School of My Dreams. It very well reflects the need for this NEP. As you were saying that it's 30+ years that the old existing NEP was there, and there was a need to change that new education policy. Now we have come out with that education policy, but at that time what went through my mind, I just penned these things down, and I hope it will be able to connect people with the need of NEP. So I'll just begin that article. I'm reading it through because these are all thoughts from my heart and mind. Ever since the dawn of internet, there is a lot of debate going on regarding changing trends in education and schooling. Gone are the days when the teachers were completely in control of the classroom proceedings. The students had to depend completely and only on the teachers, for they were the only source of knowledge known to them. And maybe because of the same reason, the teachers were able to manipulate many things on their own, particularly the answers of the questions where they would fall short of proper knowledge. But the students today are much more resourceful, thanks to the easily available me to one very relevant and debatable issue, and that is fixed syllabus, curriculum, and subjects for all the students. We all know very well that 5 fingers are not alike. Similarly, all the students are not alike. Their IQ, knowledge, interest, capabilities, abilities, learning styles, memory, and retention capacity, almost everything is different from their counterparts, with whom they are being given the same stuff to glut on into the mind and then puke the same stuff on the answer sheets at the time of examination.
Mr. Gupta, if I may, I think there is some problem with your network, so you're freezing. So we're losing you in between.
Are being taught in the same way, which might suit one but not the other. Why are all the rest, which may not be true assessment of their IQ, knowledge, interests, capabilities, abilities, learning styles, memory, and retention capacity? Why can't we treat an individual like an individual and respect his individuality? We must learn a lesson or two from our ancient history. Let's take example of the time of Mahabharata. It's a well-known fact that even each of those 5 Pandavas, namely Yudhishthir, Bhim, Arjun, Nakul, Sahadev, were masters of using different weapons and had different skills. Yudhishthir was the best at using javelin. Bhim was the master of mace. Arjun was the best archer in the world, and Nakul was the best swordsman. Even Lord Krishna and Balram had mastered different weapons. Just imagine, had they all been forced by their teacher Dronacharya to master the art of using the same weapon only, may it be javelin or a mace, would it be possible for them to win the famous battle of Mahabharata? Thank God Sachin Tendulkar was not forced to play lawn tennis. Sania Mirza was not forced to play badminton. Vishwanathan Anand was not forced to learn swimming, and MC Maricom was not forced to play chess instead. What do all these and thousands of similar examples have to say to us? Just a single answer. Let not the individuality of an individual die, especially at a school-going age. As mentioned earlier, each child has some special talent, qualities, skills, and interests. The need of the hour is to identify the same as early as possible and hone those talents, qualities, and skills and interests so that they may not be quoted by Albert Einstein, live their whole life believing they were stupid. I'll just repeat, the need of respecting their individuality is, as quoted by Albert Einstein, they should not live their whole life believing they were stupid, simply because they were the fish, but were judged by their ability to climb a tree. Let the fish be a fish and a bird be a bird by assessing one on its ability to swim, whereas the other by its ability to fly. Keeping all this in mind, the school of my dreams will be where each student will have a variety of choice when it comes to education, subjects, curriculum, class, books, and for that matter, even the teacher. There was a scene in Hindi movie 3 Idiots where Amir Khan was being shown the door of each classroom for showing his individuality and the different kind of knowledge which he questioned the authority of the teachers. When asked how would he study, his answer was, "Charo taraf gyan bat raha hai, jahan se mil raha hai, lapet lo." The knowledge is being shared everywhere. Acquire it from wherever you can, and more importantly, however you can. The school of my dreams will have no boundaries of classroom, restrictions of age limits, no compulsions of opting for studying a particular subject which the student has no liking for, and above all, will not have standardized tests to assess the students. Each student will be sent to a classroom based on the knowledge and skills he would have acquired by that time, so that we ultimately end up adding some more to his knowledge rather than repeating the same things which he already knows. Students will be given enough time to understand and learn the concept at their own pace, and they will themselves decide when are they ready to appear in the final exams based on the learning and knowledge they would have acquired by that time. No student will be labeled as failure, as the purpose of exam will not be to degrade and demoralize them, but to actually instill confidence among them that they can and they have learned what they required to go to the next level. There will be no more focus on providing knowledge and honing the skills of the there will be more focus on providing the knowledge and honing the skills of the students. They will be focused on teaching linguistic skills and basic concepts of mathematics and science to the students, rather than burdening them with loads of syllabus. In language teaching, they will be taught how to read, write, and speak and comprehend. And for that purpose, the least number of books and content will be given to them, so that they also focus more on acquiring skills than cramming the great number of chapters. Higher concepts of mathematics and science will be only taught to the students who will have keen interest in them and would want to willingly study these topics. More importantly, social science students will not be forced to memorize the facts, figures, and dates of history, geography, and civics, as all this information is available at just a few clicks of their fingertips. Rather, they will be taught the lessons learned from historical failures and success stories, will be given practical knowledge of geographical terms and conditions, and will be taught the need of importance of civics and other aspects of political science. All the students will be taught about their role and responsibilities about their family, society, environment, nation, and earth on the whole. They will be known and called only by their name, combined with unique school code, and the surnames will remain only in the papers, which will never be used to address them. This will in turn unite them rather than dividing them on the basis of religion and caste. There will be more focus on games and sports, and also practical knowledge rather than theoretical for the same. All the students will have the option of choosing career based on either studies or their hobbies. The students having acumen for acting will be given acting classes, and the ones having interest in painting, music, cooking, gardening, writing, and speaking skills, etc., will be given basics of these skills, so that the ground could be prepared for professional training and paving way to a successful career. In short, a fish will be taught only how to swim, and a bird will be taught only how to fly. Definitely not the opposite. So this was the article which I had written. I hope somewhere it correlates with what has come out in NEP also. We are respecting the individuality of the students, and at the same time, we are talking about multidisciplinary and holistic development of the students. When I mentioned about Mahabharata, it was not about giving only the training of one particular weapon. They were all taught all the weapons, but they were mastered in one. So it's not about jack of all trades and master of none, but it was about jack of all trades and master of one. This is what NEP talks about, and we have to focus on that only. And when we are talking about the universities and the schools and the gap between the schools and universities, I do believe that universities have a very important role to play in terms of the decreasing employment in the country at present. They can increase the employment. For that, they have to walk hand in hand with the schools. What lacks over here is that somehow at the school level, the universities are not able to present the kind of future the children can have, provided they opt for a particular course after opting for a particular, I can't say a stream now because there is no concept of streams in NEP, but a particular subject. Like we all know that a student of physics can now take the dance classes as well as music classes. There can be combinations of humanities and science and commerce, all can exist together as per the NEP. But now what I would request all the colleges and universities is to come out with a clear path for achieving the goals. What I have seen and observed is that there are two ways of achieving the goals. One is that, first of all, the way it happens at present, the students, they opt for a particular stream at present or some subjects based upon the experiences or guidance or knowledge sharing by their peers or the parents or somebody with whom they talk. They have a very limited source of knowledge as far as achieving the ultimate final goal is concerned. Somebody's uncle is a doctor, he wants to be a doctor. Somebody's Masiji is a lawyer, he wants to be a lawyer. Somebody has been influenced by a cricketer, he wants to be a cricketer. But they don't know how to achieve those goals. First of all, these goals are not permanent. And secondly, they don't know the way to achieve those goals. If I take example of a journey, how do we all decide for the journey? What is the first thing which comes to our mind is the destination. Where do we have to go? It's not the other way around. That first of all, we'll think, okay, now on so and so date, I will move out of the house. I will take a cab, or I'll take a train, or I'll take a flight, and then I will sit in the flight, and then I will decide, okay, where do I need to go? It never happens this way. We all first of all decide our destination, our goal. This is my destination. I need to reach there, and I need to reach there on this particular date and this particular time. For that, I need this mode of conveyance, which will be definitely comfortable for me and which will be the most convenient way to reach my destination. We are not able to project that kind of picture about the career to the students. They simply sit in the train or sit in the bus, and wherever the bus is going to that destination, they assume that, okay, fine, this is our destination. They do not decide their destination first. There, the role of universities is very important. The universities, like I also get a lot of universities and their representatives coming to us for career counseling of the students and all, but that does not happen at that scale, at that level, where the students are able to visualize their complete career, and for that, which mode of conveyance, for that destination, which mode of conveyance they need to take, and how long will be the journey, how what are the stoppages which are going to be there on the way, where do they need to take a little rest, where do they need to escalate and change the mode of conveyance. All these things have to be cleared to the students, and only universities, colleges can do that. But for that, you also have to develop such maybe career courses, or maybe such kind of webinars, or maybe you need to train your team in such a way that first of all, they should be able to extract it out of the mind of the students. What do you want to be? These are the options made. Option A, B, C, D, and so on. And what will interest the students more is the earning. Frankly speaking, till today in India, money speaks. So when we talk about career, the most important thing which comes to the mind is paisa kitna milega, monthly salary kitni hogi. So if we are able to relate the careers with the kind of earnings the students are going to get in future if they opt for that career, and then tell the students, now you have decided this career, now this is the subject which will help you reach this career. This is the multidisciplinary combination which will help you achieve this career. And for that, you need to go to this particular university or this particular college, or you need to opt for these subjects after 10th standard. So I hope I have taken a lot of time. Thank you very much for listening to me with a lot of patience.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing those reflections. And I think two takeaways, and I have a couple of questions that I would eventually want to want both the panelists to address, but I will come to them later. But what I want to highlight is, I think, two important points that emerge from what you've said. One is, of course, a clear path that you think that we as institutions of higher education would have to lay out for students in terms of that, multidisciplinary education, interdisciplinarity, flexible entry, exit, all of that is wonderful as concepts, but what does it lead to? What kind of industry preparedness can be given to students in terms of their skills, so what can they expect, and what you said, what is the ultimate destiny towards which all of this is leading to? Perhaps a clear-cut path to be laid out. That is one. And the second, when you highlighted some of the key points from your article, which wonderfully you said that you wrote it before NEP came in, and it is very interesting. And I'm quite resonating with the example you gave, the Mahabharata example, and I know a parallel kind of concept, say in Plato's, Plato's Republic, when he spoke about education, he said that education is something that should be available to all, and one should know, reason, valor, and appetite. And education should be a way for people to decide whether, it is reason that dominates, then you become philosopher kings. It is valor, then you become warriors. If it is appetite, then you are workers and artisans, and auxiliary classes. And that is how the education system should work, for you to be able to come to terms with what is it that your skills lies with. He calls it the tripartite division of the soul, but it is very, very, very similar to what, what you have also illustrated through the examples from Mahabharata and others, that, to be able for a fish to be identify and how to do the swimming is something that our education system to be able to do. Although I have some, sort of follow-up questions on that, which I will come in a couple of minutes. Before that, I want to give the platform and the floor to Ms. Amrita Burman and to request her to kindly share her reflections on the topic. Ms. Burman, over to you.
Thank you so much. And I would also like to join hands with Mr. Gupta to thank Jindal Global University for giving us this opportunity, and me in particular, to speak. And as I was mentioning earlier, it's been a pleasure being in touch with Professor Raj, and with that, and with a few of my students being a part of the Jindal Global University, it's left a very, very great impact. He himself has really impressed me. So anyways, coming to the topic now. NEP, I think, came right in the middle of the pandemic and possibly was the most spoken about topic throughout. I frankly don't know, not only me, but I don't know how many educators went on different webinars at that time to speak about the NEP. And I'm really happy about it, because I always tell all my colleagues that, for us educators, I think this is our Bible, and it's so important for us to know what's there in it, because it guides us, guides our institutions, guides the higher educational institutions and what we need to do. So I really consider it as a very fine document. It's come after 34 years, as you mentioned, and therefore there was a long wait, but I'm glad it's there finally. It's not only a very fine document, I think it's a document which has a vision. It's a very visionary document. It's very holistic in its approach, and it talks about all kinds of skills, competencies that we've been speaking about. So when it's kind of putting it into a practical use or practical, implementation. So if they talk about competency based learning, then they've obviously connected it to assessments being on competency based. And so, they talk about school assessments changing. They talk about the way higher education assessments also need to change, especially in the school. Now, what's really very interesting for me in the NEP is, of course, there are two parts to it. So I'm just mentioning certain things which all of us know. But why I'm particularly mentioning this is, I always say that for me personally, as a school educator, coincidentally, the school part of the NEP is not very exciting. It's not exciting because it's for any progressive schools, except for those things that have to come from the government, like I just mentioned, a SUFFLE, which is for 3, 5, and 8, or the NAS we just had. These kind of things are very government driven, because we are getting ready to appear for a PISA, for example. But most of the other things, no silos in school education is nothing new, or getting in for multidisciplinary approach and all kind of different subjects like design thinking or artificial intelligence, things that they speak about, is nothing new again. All progressive schools have been doing it for years. Personally, for me, actually, the higher education part is very, very exciting. And there are reasons for the higher education part. I think the kind of people we are, when something comes right from the top, we follow it very well. We are actually forced to follow it. Okay. So there may be certain things I do or I don't do as a school, but when it's there in the college, when it's there in the higher education, it will come down. So let me give you a few examples of that. The multidisciplinary. For years, not now, for years, we've been telling our kids, look, who says you can't do physics, chemistry, and economics? Or you can't do physics, chemistry, and history? Even the CBSE says you can do it. CBSE has never spoken about streams. Never. It doesn't talk about streams. No results are out on the basis of streams. No forms are filled up on the basis of streams. If I would send a child doing geography and history and physics, they would accept it and give the result and tell the child, go to any place on earth and do what you wish to do. If you have a dream, go follow it. Yet it was not happening. There was a reason for it. If I would tell my child, go do physics, chemistry, and geography, the child could not get admission in any university in India in particular. Yes, when the child goes abroad, they would be able to, but not in India. Some of the private universities, I'm not very sure, just may have accepted, but they are very, very few, possibly very few. But most of the children obviously have a dream. I want to go to DU. Now, if you go to DU, they won't accept you because they'll say, this is not the stream we wanted. If you want to do BSc, look, you need to be doing either physics, chemistry, bio, or you need to be doing physics, chemistry, and maths. Okay, so it would always be there. But today, when we are breaking down the silos in higher education, when we are talking about a multidisciplinary approach, when we are talking about you can do any subject from anywhere, because what is important is that you need to have a holistic approach to education. You need to have a scientific temperament when it comes to education. We don't care what subjects you do, you will be accepted in the colleges. All my efforts for so many years, which went in vain, is actually going to get fructified today. Because when my child is going to go out and there is a path for the child and the child gets admission somewhere, the child is going to take up these different subjects. This is now that our dream is going to get fulfilled. So that's one. The other thing that's come from top below, for example, we spoke about vocational education. Again, vocational education has been around for some time, but there wasn't that kind of vocational skill-based education the way the NEP has spoken about it. And there is going to be a complete exit entry. You can go in for vocational education, you can come out of vocational education. So obviously there are different, I think you would know that much better than me, where they talk about vocational education as one important subject starting right from the first year, right? Now, we were again trying to do a lot of skill-based, a lot of vocational education. There really wasn't too much of an acceptance. It was very difficult again to convince parents. Today, when it says in the years of 6, 7, and 8, in grade 6, 7, and 8, it's a good idea to do vocational education because a child will get to know, number one, if he's really interested in a vocation over some other professional degree. Number two, if nothing, the child would get dignity of labor. All right, that's what is written in NEP. They will be sensitized. When we do vocational education over class 6, 7, and 8, it makes it so much easier for children to understand that it's okay to do vocational education and you can make a life out of your career by doing a vocation. So vocational education is another thing which now accepted at the top has come right down to school education. So when we were talking about bridging the gap between the university and school, these are also examples of the way things really get intertwined. Let's talk about the most current thing, CUET. It's all over the newspaper since the 2 days since the Academic Council had a meeting, right? For years, children have been talking and discussing that we just cannot handle it. Number one, the high cutoffs, which made no sense to us, even though we would be leading and heading the most progressive of schools. The results actually did not give us any mirror image of what the child is doing or is capable of doing. And the children who were really capable couldn't find a place for themselves. So something was horribly wrong with the way we gave our marks, and children were getting so frustrated. And the fact that there are so many entrances that they had to go in for. I'm so happy that the CUCET, which was already there in some places, has now become the CUET, and it's coming in finally. It seems there's lack of clarity. It seems there's a problem somewhere, but it's okay. At least the journey will begin. I'm sure we'll reach the, a kind of a balance. The moment a CUET has come in, what have most of us as progressive schools done again? We have all started also emphasizing on verbal reasoning, quantitative aptitude testing, and the fact that there is going to be something like the first paper, which is going to be knowledge based. And I think all this debate about schools and do your subjects, you're not going to be able to get into pass your COET and get into maybe a Delhi university. So the moment there is talk about quantitative aptitude testing, verbal reasoning, which is also again there as a part of the NEP, it now comes into my classroom in a far more stronger way, because higher education is pushing it. Therefore, it has to come down to school, because school, I think, is actually, and especially 11 and 12, or let's say 9, 10, 11 and 12, is the preparatory 4 years, which leads you to your career subject choices finally and into your career. I think another very, very important part of the NEP, which has a strong connect with higher education, is the 4-year integrated B.Ed course. I think that is going to be a revolution, complete revolution. I'm sure anybody who's from the school education will agree with me that 99% of the teachers in school do not come into education to be teachers by choice. Most of them are by chance. Because you probably set out to do a BCom, couldn't make it to a CA, and decided I want to be a teacher. Giving you one small example, and there are many like this. But the moment a child comes out of class 12, decides there and then, I need to do a 4-year integrated course to become a teacher after 4 years, the child is taking a decision much earlier in life, and there are 99% chances that you're following your passion. I think we will get far, far more passionate teachers who would be studying again in multidisciplinary institutions. They very much say that all small B.Ed colleges are going to close down, and all these B.Ed training grounds are going to be in multidisciplinary institutes and universities. And I think this is probably one of the best things that's going to happen when it comes to school education, and the roots are going to be in higher education. So I think this complete gap between school and university, by the very fact that we brought both of them together under one NEP, though there are 2 different sections to it, but I think there's a huge connect. And the schools are now looking up, looking at universities, looking at colleges, because I also see something very important, because we also run 2 colleges for women. I think you would know it much more than we, where already the change has begun. There are many things, many courses, including the vocational education courses, which have already come in the first year curriculum. I can see it, and we are affiliated to a state university, and I'm sure that the central universities are doing even better. Private universities are probably doing even better because you're far more progressive with your curriculum. So the fact remains that the moment the change has already come in, there is a political intent to bring this change in. So I'm very hopeful as an educator that the NEP, with the multidisciplinary part, with the connect between the school and the colleges, which whether intended or no has happened, is going to bring about a huge revolution in higher education in India, and by default into school education in India too. So that's all that I wanted to say.
Thank you so much. That was, I think, so succinctly and brilliantly put, Ms. Burman, and there's so many takeaways. And I think what you highlighted is, I think, 2 very, very important points. One, that the vision itself that is enshrined in the NEP, that there is merit to that vision, that it itself is a visionary document, that there is a political intent that it highlights in terms of what it wants to achieve in terms of higher education. And the very fact that the document brings in school and university education under sort of one education policy framework forces us to think of it as something that is deeply intertwined. So I think that is very, very important. What you said, Ms. Burman, that that the school. So one thing, what you spoke about progressive schools such as yours, where many of the things that NEP envisages are things that you have already been doing in terms of a multidisciplinary curriculum or so on and so forth. That is also equally true of universities such as ours. where, a lot of the things that the NEP envisages in terms of multidisciplinarity or interdisciplinarity or international collaborations, problem solving, critical thinking, in terms of experiential learning, are things that we have been doing. And I think it's very important what the NEP does is that makes conversations like yours and mine possible, where we can come together and educators and think about ways to bridge the gaps where they exist, but also it provides a framework where, institutions which are perhaps state institutions, public institutions, and so on and so forth, could now think about education in ways, which is much more visionary. But given the beautifully set context and framework by both Mr. Gupta and you, Ms. Burman, I have a couple of questions that I want to throw on you. And the fact that it is just us and we do have a little bit of time, I want to take the advantage of it. And it's very rare that I have educators like you, and to be able to have this kind of conversations. So my first question is that, if you, the kind of schools and institutions that you represent, of course, they're extremely progressive, a lot of things they're already doing, and you are very happy with the vision that has come in. But do you think that the vision that the NEP has in terms of, self-designed curriculums, the kind of education that it wants to provide students, physics and music together, the flexibility, are our teachers at this point of time, and I'm not talking about perhaps the kind of educational settings in which you are placed, but talking about across the education landscape, what kind of training and what kind of preparedness will require in terms of our teachers, our staff, our educators? And also, how do you think, because there is in India a very set understanding in parents and guardians, in family members, about what a particular career for a child should look like. Right. So there is a very set idea. So would that be easy to break through with the NEP, or there is much more work required to be able to engage with these key stakeholders in order to be able to truly implement the NEP vision? Mr. Gupta, I want to come to you first, and then I will go to Ms. Burma.
Right. It's a very good question, actually. It's one thing to draft an NEP and to implement it, and it's other thing to be prepared for it. When we talk about the multidisciplinary approach, and when we talk about a student taking physics and dance together, or physics and music together, I would agree with ma'am that CBSE never had a concept of streams. This they keep emphasizing upon, but at the same time, what happens that there are certain fixed combinations of subjects which the students have to opt for. Beyond that combination, CBSE also did not allow all the students to take any subject of their choice. So till now, it is how it is happening. And second thing is, when we talk about this kind of approach, that a student can opt any subject combination, any subject with any other subject, then in that case, first and foremost thing which we need to be ready with is the kind of timetable which we will have in the schools. Because in schools, we have a lot of constraints regarding the subject teachers, how much in the terms of number of teachers a school can afford also. Like if I have to teach physics to a student and music and maybe one language, and the other student opts for altogether different combination, then in the same class, there will be students having many different combinations of subjects. Then are we in a position to appoint that many number of teachers? I agree, fine. It may be possible that, okay, at the same time, the kind of combination which the students have opted for them, we can set up periods. Okay, you can go to this class, like Amir Khan, I gave the example. You can go to this class, their music class is going on at this time. Okay, next period you want to do physics, you can go to this class. Next period you want to do Hindi, you can go to this class. A teacher is already there teaching the same subject which you have to. But is it possible to have these many number of teachers? No, in that case, what I feel, what has come as a boon to us is COVID. Because had the COVID not been there, this concept of online education would not have been there. We were thinking of it maybe in hearts of hearts, but we did not bring it into practice. We were not completely ready for it also. Thank God, all the teachers took it as a challenge, all the schools took it as a challenge, and they came out brilliantly in terms of using the platforms for online education. Now, what I do believe that this can come out handy as NEP talks about collaboration also. When we talk about collaboration, there are chains of schools, especially in those chains, at least there is a possibility to appoint teachers for different subjects and use the online mediums to provide teaching to the students sitting in Dasua, in Ludhiana, in Delhi, in Meerut, together the teaching of one subject by the teacher of one school who can teach all the students at different locations using the online platform. The same thing can happen if it is possible, like in the same city, if some schools can collaborate with each other. If it is not possible for me to appoint a Carnatic language teacher or Carnatic dance teacher, maybe some other school can appoint, and vice versa. I can appoint a teacher for whom the students want to study in that particular school. They want to get admission in that school, but want to study a subject for which that school doesn't have a teacher, but I have a teacher. So that kind of collaboration can be set up where maybe we can help each other. And in that case, only it is possible that this kind of multidisciplinary teaching and learning can go on. I hope answer.
Yes, absolutely, it does. And you spoke about some practical aspects in terms of timetable, in terms of teaching appointments, but you also spoke about taking advantage of the kind of technological advancement that we saw in the context of COVID. You spoke about the possibility of doing collaborations across schools to be able to come together and the possibilities that it represents. Ms. Burman, would you like to add to what Mr. Gupta said, or would you like to?
I kind of agree with him, because despite the fact that where I disagree with him, CBSE, I still say, does not give any combinations. I could give any combinations, but where I agree is, the fact is that there are limitations. There are limitations which are practical of not only timetable and putting the timetable together. If I have space, I'll probably be able to do that also. But where I really lack are my finances, are the funds. After all, how many teachers can I keep? Because It only depends on the number of students who pick up a particular subject. There has to be a good amount of students for us to run the school. And so that's there. I also agree with him that it's good to, either have online classes. Online classes completely always for a particular subject also doesn't work. Many of them are practical based when it comes to the senior classes. But when he speaks about what the NEP says, the school complexes, the clusters, where schools can come together, and again, if they really change at CBSE itself, because today, if I fill up my list of teachers who are there teaching in my school, I'm not really allowed to give any part-time teacher. They won't accept it, but they have to make that change, which they do speak about, that you could take up part-time teachers to be able to teach the local language and the different languages that they've spoken about, the power of the language. They say you can pick up part-time teachers. So I guess even for subjects like this, they would allow us to pick up part-time teachers. So if my teacher comes only twice in a week, I pay that teacher accordingly, but the children gain. So I completely agree with almost everything that Mr. Gupta said. These are some limitations. Talking about choices of students, the second part of your question, that is it that despite the fact that I may give varied subjects, would the children really take it up? Because many of them still have very hackneyed ideas, because, and I think the reason for this is maybe two or three. One could be lack of awareness of different careers. The fact that you can mix a lot of subjects and actually be ready to face many more careers, the choices become even wider. children don't sometimes think about it because nobody's spoken to them about varied careers that you can go in for. And I think the other thing is also not only people speaking to the kids, it's also speaking to parents. Many a times, and I think all of us like school leaders face this, where children come and they speak to their teachers, they speak to their leaders saying that, I really want to do something so and so, but my dad, please speak to him. He just wouldn't agree. And there are times when the principals or the teachers can turn around the parents, but there are times you can try and you can just fail completely. So I think those thoughts which are coming from down the ages of children just being in little silos of professions, unless and until we break them down with good number one, I think there can be a lot of industry visit. I think that was mentioned by Mr. Gupta. There can be industry visit, people coming and speaking about how much they actually earn when it comes to careers which are which are different, which are not the often picked up careers. So I think just exposure, talking, convincing, giving time. Society is changing, outlooks are changing, and I'm very confident even this will change. There will be different careers coming in and acceptance to it.
Yeah, I would just like to add to it.
Please.
Recently, our organization had organized a webinar, and Dr. Biswajit Saha was a part of the webinar. He is the one who is the having the brainchild behind these vocational courses and all, who is working on these all. So I had this same question from him also. We were like that, okay, there are not many students who are very much interested into vocational course. Why are they not opting for? What should we do more? I gave him one suggestion only. I said, Dr. Saha, if it is possible, kindly show them what are they going to get after enrolling themselves into this vocational course. If they opt for this particular vocational course, they will get this kind of job placement, and this is the package per annum or per month which they can get, provided they are very good at their skills in this vocational course. And he agreed to the same thing. He said, yes, this is what we have been missing. We had not shown them that kind of the attraction, the force of attraction which will take them towards opting for that vocational course. First of all, what is the source of attraction for them? The source of attraction for our particular Indian families is the package. So that has to be there into the picture.
See, I think package is an attraction everywhere on earth, not only in
everywhere. I agree.
At the end of all the flowery talks, you pick up a career because you need to earn.
I agree. That's why we keep running abroad.
Yeah,
because we get better packages over there.
Exactly.
I completely. In
So
fact, the NEP talks about it.
Yeah, I wish NEP would be able to bridge that gap also, which is there in the employment abroad and in the employment back home in India as well.
Just to add, I think NEP talks about it, in the section when it talks about vocational training, it has a line that says that, vocational training traditionally has been looked at in India for those who have not got anything else. So the moment you say vocational training in India, you think welding and plumbing and, which are not considered aspirational, options
ITI.
in terms of career.
ITI, you will relate it with ITI. This kind of courses, people think that we ITI courses ki tarah se hi hain, we will be getting that side.
So, exactly. So unless and until that academia, and it's so heartening for me to hear the kind of conversation and the brilliant points that you're making, because, if this happens at the school level, it makes the journey at the university level so much easier. Because, Ms. Burman, you're absolutely right. The problem of perception, the problem of the need to speak to parents is not something that is only happening at the school level. Right? At the university level, when you're talking about, say, a liberal arts education, or we're talking about a multidisciplinary education, it is the children are going through the same kind of conundrums, the same kind of problems in convincing parents. You have one understanding of how you want to go about your career, but very conventional understanding of what a career should look like. Right? And how a career looked like perhaps in the times of my parents or me have shifted. Now career is no longer about something that you commit to like you enter one and you retire from it. There is so much more that is happening in terms of careers. There's so much new possibilities that are opening up, and you're absolutely right that there is a need of an industry academia interface, not only limiting that to the university level, but that interface should be there at the school level itself, where they have a clear understanding of where they're heading if they make choices which are not quote unquote conventional choices. And for that, an increased awareness is required. And we do hope that the platforms like this, where we are meeting as educators, if we can visit each other, talk to students, will be able to, and this is not something that we would do for a university only as ours, but it is a conversation that is required for the higher education landscape in India. And I'm so glad and grateful to both of you that you know, you have thought of coming here and discussing all of these very, very important points with us. You know, when we started the conversation, we said that, you know, just 3 of us in 40 minutes. Actually, we've gone more than an hour. And I think we still have quite a few things to talk about, but because of paucity of time, I would like to end the conversation here. I just want to say that as my concluding remarks based on what you both spoke about, is that perhaps today the conclusion is on an optimistic note. That the vision is at the right place, that the intent is there. Now, how does that intent and that vision get implemented over the next few years? At least 2040 is the official deadline for implementation of NEP, is where the role of all the stakeholders, including schools and institutions of higher education and educators at all levels, will come in. And Mr. Gupta, you spoke about, NEP bridging the gap. So the NEP, of course, we would want NEP to bridge the gap, but NEP in itself as a document is unable to bridge the gap. It is what we are able to do with this document.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
What kind of support we are able to provide from teachers training and recruitment, to providing parity across schools, to use of technology in meaningful ways, to be able to use technology in meaningful ways. We also have to address the technological divide. The kind of privileges that you and I have in terms of the educational institutions that we are part of, a majority of the Indian population also do not have that privilege. The fact that a majority of the Indian population do not have access to technology, internet, a smartphone. So how do we address those gaps as a nation, as community, as educators, to be able to truly realize the potential and the promises that NEP make? And I wish there are ways in which we can collaborate, come together, and not only have meaningful conversations, but we find meaningful ways to collaborate, and come together to be able to see through the vision that NEP proposes. So with that, I would like to again, extend heartfelt gratitude to both the panelists, Ms. Amrita Burman and Mr. Rasik Gupta. Thank you so much. We're truly grateful for giving us so much of time and sharing your thoughts and reflections. And I do hope that the interaction and conversations do not end here, and we find more ways and more meaningful ways of collaborating with each other. I also want to thank the team, Ms. Indu Kaul, Ms. Hitanshi Thukral, Mr. Satyam Shekhar, the entire IT team, Kushagra Bhatnagar, all of you who have supported, because of which we could have this meaningful conversation. And I do hope that there is something that you both as panelists also take away from this conversation. So thank you so much.